All right, so we're a little bit late. Brad Holmes went on a little bit early. Said 4 p.m. Looks like it started a few moments ago. So I'm going to get it rolling here. And
of when
see
you
what he has
may
to
have
say.
not saying that we ever ignored intangibles, but maybe if you said well he has this X amount of talent, ability, and say that the intangibles aren't like on steroids, but just needs a little bit of work, and you learn some lessons along the way. But I still am a firm believer that that is the true separator of success at this level. I can name countless examples back from when I was with the Rams, and countless examples even now within these 3 years that we've been building. But we look at our top players that have been really core foundational players, and they have the intangibles that we're looking for. So it's not a surprise they've had the success they've had.
All right, so right away he's mentioning core. Now I didn't put out the over unders on how many times he's going to talk about core or foundation or fundamentals or our guys, but I think that we're going to get the story here quite clearly that that's what Brad Holmes is going to talk about. How important the guys are that they hire and that they draft, and when they bring them into this team, just how important they are to keep them around. And again, I apologize, we're a little bit late here, but we're going to keep rolling. Question is, philosophically, how important is it to sign your own players?
Yeah, well, Dave, really, them, and it's not just you drafted them and them. So even if they're not performing well and they're not meeting expectations, that you just keep them. No, it's that you try your best to acquire the best players. Acquire the right players through the draft, and hopefully the goal is to develop, and then once they reach a point where they're eligible to resign, and you resign them, you feel really, really good about it. And that kind of brings back into the free agency aspect of that's why we always talk about how selective and strategic we do have to be in free agency, because you don't really know these players. You see what you see on film, but like I've told all of y'all, that's the easy, coherent part. Can a guy come off the foot? Oh, okay, that's easy, but you don't really know them, and so that's why you got to be real careful. But when you draft and your own guys, you feel a lot more comfortable.
All right, so this is going to go back to what I've been talking about for, I guess, a while now. Brad Holmes is very particular. He is all about his own guys. We know that, right? And what did he just say? You don't know them, know them. You bring your own guys in. You develop them, you train them up. You want to re-sign them when it gets to that point that if you feel like they're good enough to keep around, you're going to do that. But what he's hinting at here is that free agency is kind of off limits for Brad Holmes. That he's going to be too particular. So if you don't know them, how are you ever going to get better? So it goes back to what I've been saying, half a season away. Remember? Half a season away. So right now, this draft is it for Brad Holmes to have a full team, both sides of the ball. Now, I know he hasn't selected 11 on one and 11 on the other, but we could see this take 5 seasons, 6 seasons to where Brad Holmes has his players that he knows. All right, let's keep going.
I'll get to your question. Go ahead. Yeah, my evaluation on him was.
Question was evaluation on Jahmyr Gibbs. Do you feel like he's just scratching the surface?
Exactly what he did this year. I do think he's got a lot of meat on the bone as well. I think I think I said it ad nauseum. He's a multifaceted, explosive weapon that can do a lot of different things. He's electric. I believe he's a game breaker. And I think early on, he's so conscientious and prideful. And I thought this was a real credit to him. He actually recognized that he was going a little too fast. And early on, he was going to. He's such a fast and explosive player. He was almost going too fast. And
I hate to say it, but I said that in the first 4 weeks of the season, that Jahmyr Gibbs and his timing was just a little bit off. And sometimes, everyone talks about speed. We were talking about Jameson Williams and how fast he is, and everyone's saying, well, Jared Goff can't throw him the ball. He runs too quick, or that's the problem. See, sometimes you have all of these great intangibles. You have all of this, amazing speed, and it can't be utilized if you don't know timing. And what Brad Holmes is about to talk about is timing. It was all timing related, that Jahmyr Gibbs had to hit the hole at the right time, that the blockers had to open the hole at the right time. And that's why it took, 3, 4, 5 games for Jahmyr Gibbs to finally get it right. And man, did he get it right. So now J-Mo's starting to get it right. What are we going to see in his third season?
Once he kind of caught up to the speed of the game and realized, you know what, I know I'm fast. I trust my speed. I know I'm explosive. I don't need to go but so fast. And so then that's why I think his vision started to get a lot better. We never really had any concerns about his vision, but once he figured out the speed of which he needed to play and got up to that speed, he became the player that we thought we were going to get. And again, I think he's got a whole lot more left in the tank.
That's exciting.
Say that one more time. I don't know if it's developmental program. They just have a long-standing tradition and history of producing really good football players, and that's a credit to the coaches that they've had and the type of players that they get. Obviously, it's right down the road, so we get a lot of good exposure to those players. But
I want to say the question was talking about the University of Michigan and being a developmental program. I want to say that's what he said, and utilizing, that opportunity to, find the players. And obviously Brad Holmes is saying what he's saying here without saying the name of the school, which is kind of weird.
So what a lot of those guys come out, you kind of have a sense, you kind of know what you're getting. And, you do your due diligence on all of them. And I'm not saying that they're all the same, but they've done a really good job. And I'll say we're pretty fortunate to be right down the road from a program just like that. Yeah, it's a little bit of an advantage, just because, you can get guys there that might not kind of.
Question was, is that an advantage to have a program like that in your backyard?
It's your 30 account, so you can just bring guys in, and if you want to work them out, you can work them out. If you want to spend time with them, get to know them a little bit better, you can do that. Just as a lot of other teams can do with other colleges, big-time programs that they're close to. I know you had a question.
Second part of the question real quick. When people who look like you have the success that you had, does that help people come behind?
Yeah.
Question was two-part. It was there any satisfaction in the success that you've had so far? Are you continuing on in the process? And then there was a follow-up about something about the success of Brad Holmes that he's had right now, and maybe it was opening doors for people to follow through or behind him. Didn't quite catch that second part there. Here we go.
Well, the first part is I'm a firm believer in surrendering the results to the process. So the process will always be numero uno. I think once you start kind of relishing in your.
All right, here's the question. How many times is he going to say plan? Because he's using process. He always says plan.
Achievements, I think that's when you can start, you could tend to maybe take your foot off the gas and you can get yourself in big trouble. So I do think this league is too hard to ever let your foot off the gas. I've always said at length, no matter how good we get as a team, no matter how good our roster is going to get, we're always going to take this same process and keep our foot on the gas to improve as much as we can. Just to your second part of the question, it means a lot to me, just because I look at the people that came before me, and I believe that it's a responsibility that's owed, and you want to set the right example. You want to make sure that opportunities are laid for people that's coming behind you. Yeah, Terrell. He's so Terrell,
he said that he has a unique relationship, or at least the question statement was, you have a unique relationship with Terrell. And then I missed the rest of it. So we'll see what he says here.
I want to say that was his first position coach job. He might have been a GA at East Carolina when he got done playing, and so I believe A&T might have been his first position coach job. But Terrell, man, he's a great teacher. He's a straight shooter. He's really the first coach that really, taught me the nuances of achieving what you want to achieve on the field behind the scenes. He's the one that used to bring me in and sit me down and watch tape with me all summer and kind of learn those ins and outs and developing a relationship so, you can build that trust with the coach. And then when, he was a great coach in terms of holding us accountable. And so you built that trust, and when we didn't do the right thing, he held us accountable. And we didn't like it all the time, but he's an excellent teacher. I'm not surprised with the success that he's had. Even when I was a young scout, he was in the college ranks. I want to say he was at Purdue for a while, and he produced a lot of good defensive linemen out there at coming out of Purdue at that time. And I believe I was a combine scout at the time, and that's when I really knew, like, okay, I knew that you were always a good coach, but when he was producing all those defensive linemen out of Purdue, I was like, okay, this guy's cooking with gas. But not surprised, very happy, obviously, him being my D-line coach in college is not why he's here. He's here because of his body of work.
I love it. I love the relationships that Brad Holmes has, and Dan Campbell too. It speaks volumes to the type of people they are off the field. But to have this type of relationship, which I'm going to have to go dig into it a little bit more. I knew that there was some relationship between Terrell and Brad Holmes, but what it sounds like was Terrell was maybe the coach of Brad Holmes when Brad was playing back in the day. But here's one more thing I want to add to this. The fact that he was studying film so intently during his early years is exactly why I do trust in the way that Brad Holmes drafts. This guy's been watching tape for more years than some people have been alive that are in this stream right now. 20 plus years, 22, 24 plus years of watching tape and trying to find, like he says, the little nuances, the little keys. That is so important to pick up and to separate it from the rest of the guys that are just out there running drills. And that's how you find those good players. Interesting relationship here. I can't wait to see how Terrell turns out.
Earlier this week, you talked about just the excitement of the challenge.
Yeah.
We also know it's a little bit more difficult to move around at the top of the board, just the weight and the value of those games. Is it also exciting because of the flexibility you can move up and move down?
Yeah.
Talking about Brad Holmes being excited about the draft, and is there any flexibility with him being able to move around at the pick that he's in?
I mean, I view it a lot like last year in the draft. We had those 2-2s kind of in the middle right there last year in the draft, and I was really excited about having those 2-2s because in exactly kind of what we did. You never know how it's going to pan out, but being able to use one to move up and get a Brian Branch, and you got the other one to kind of move down and collect more assets and, eventually, get in position to get a Hendon Hooker. So that the spot that we're in, it is exciting to have that flexibility because a lot of things can happen when you're sitting back there. But again, I'm excited about being in that position. It's kind of, it's not, I don't want to paint this as pressure, but, you're kind of out of the top 10 beauty pageant, and you're just kind of like, look, man, let's just find the best football player.
What's Washington getting in Lance Moore?
Oh, man, Lance is getting Washington's getting a really good one. And I always say in this league, it's hard to keep the good ones, and Lance is about as consistent as it gets. There's certain people that you work with that they're kind of like set it and forget it guys, and guys that you trust, very reliable, very dependable, very strong evaluator, kind of man of few words, but when he speaks, it holds a lot of weight. But that was a big loss. That was a big loss losing him. Obviously, it's opportunities for others to take on more ownership and step up. But especially coming off of a year before where we lost to Dave Sears and then Lance Newmark after that. But I also understand the reality of that was a great opportunity for Lance, just as it was with Dave, and we'll be just fine. Not to undermine Lance's contributions, but they are getting a very good evaluator, a very good person, a very good human being, trusted, dependable, and very reliable. I got you, Justin. No, we haven't really weighed that into any of.
I think they're talking about contract extensions and trying to get them done before the draft. Is it sway in anything for Brad Holmes right now in his evaluation process or what they're going to do in the draft? I think was the question in a lot more words than what was asked, but we'll hear what he has to say.
Of our decision making, we're in alignment in the direction that we want to proceed. And again, like I told you before, once we have updates, we'll make sure you guys get it.
The cognitive testing, I don't know how much you guys use.
He's totally ignoring the question. Good for Brad.
Yep.
Some players said they're not going to take that. What do you miss out if they don't take that in terms of
This is an interesting one because they're talking about players not taking the cognitive testing portion of this, and what does that mean to Brad, and how does he feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're making an investment, you want the most information as possible to make you feel good that you're making a sound decision, and when you have less information, you might be a little more hesitant on pulling the trigger on making that investment. But with all that said, the representatives and the players, they're entitled to their own, choices and decisions. So they have freedom to do what they want to do. But on our side, yeah, obviously, like to have the more information.
So this could be a big one for a few players. Now, I don't know exactly who is not taking the cognitive portion of the test, but I will say this: Hendon Hooker did not do very well on that test. Now, everything else about Hendon Hooker is incredible. And the thing that we heard coming out of training camp last year from Mark Brunell was anytime that he went to Hendon Hooker with anything, bang, he gets the answer. He already knew it. He was sharp as a tack. So he fails, or somewhat failed that test. And it's a new one. It's not the Wonderlic anymore. It's something different. The cognitive functioning test. So for the fact that Hendon Hooker didn't do well on the test, but he's really good, in the film room. He's really good, throughout training camp and in the whole process of learning the playbook. How much weight do you put into it, right? I think that test, it gives you some things, to think about the player, but I'm a guy that, hey, it's 90-10, 90 mental, 10% physical during the game. But prior to that, it's the other way. It's 90% mental, 90% physical, 10% mental to get yourself there. But it's that mental aspect that is going to get you that much further later in your career when things are just a lot quicker. You're picking it up and you're putting it down right away. So it's interesting. I can't wait to see. I mean, we've heard Caleb Williams isn't going to throw. And he's only going to throw at his pro day. I'm wondering who's going to skip the cognitive portion.
Sometimes.
Brad, the salary cap increase obviously gives average a little bit of flexibility. I'm curious if you see it as an advantage specifically for a team like yours who's trying to really build that.
Question is about salary cap increase. Is it going to give any flexibility to what they're going to do?
Yeah, it was a little surprising. I didn't know it was going to go to where it went, but we've already made the necessary adjustments in our planning and budgeting, and I give those guys a lot of credit. Mike Disner and Brandon Sostin, they do a great job with our football admin crew, but we've already been at work and making those adjustments, and it's good flexibility to have. There's some advantages there, but again, you still got to be smart.
So I guess what I'm going to take from that is there's been a few comments, few questions, a few statements over the last couple of days when we learned about the salary cap increase. And I've heard, the Lions are going to overpay now. They're going to be spending more money on players. That's simply just never been the case, won't be the case. When you look at the NFL, when the salary cap kind of went backwards one year, that they still had to spend the same amount of money that these players were worth. They just didn't have as much to spend. So like Brad Holmes said they already made the adjustments prior to this knowledge. So they already knew what things they had in front of them, what players that they could bring in and what it was going to look like, come free agency, probably what were they going to have available. Now they have a little bit of a cushion, but as Brad Holmes just stated, they still have to be careful. They still have to be frugal, if you will, to make sure that they make all the ends meet. I would hope that he stores a kitty in his back pocket for the trade deadline, unlike last season. But I think what we're learning from Brad Holmes is you don't know what you don't know, and that's why he's holding tight on free agency.
Yeah. You definitely. It's always it's an advantage of when you can kind of keep it in house and promote.
Question was keeping your guys in house. Is there advantages there on the guys that you bring in? Kind of like the very first question that he already answered. And what does it mean to continue to keep the guys that you've drafted? Here's my only question, really, for Brad Holmes with this thought process: is your ego going to get in place of letting a guy go? William Clay Ford had a problem with letting players go. Amazing man, did a lot for this country and a lot for this city and this team, but he didn't let players go. I hope that we don't see that happen here where players are just not good enough, but we're hanging on to them because Brad drafted them. That's going to be the question to watch, over the coming years.
From within, but sometimes guys like a Lance Newbart that had over 25 years of experience, those you might not have that in house. We have a relatively younger crew, and those guys, they're a hardworking crew that they have a lot of upside, and they're very talented as well. But sometimes you might have to look externally, but we'll just make sure that we do our due diligence, and we'll make the best decision. But yeah, it is a lot kind of like Ross.
So this question was more posed towards internal admin staff, not the players.
Buildings about drafting and signing your own, and those guys, and if you want to promote within, and we have a good development system in house currently, but we'll make the best decision going forward.
Will change it all with a lot less underclassmen? I don't know if that's NIL or just whatever the reasons. It seems like there's a lot less.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I kind of was, I'm not going to say scared about that. I kind of had thoughts that might be coming, that those numbers might be dropping. With the current landscape now, I don't want to comment too much on it. I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers drop even more next year. Obviously, traditionally, the underclassmen have been the meat of the first two rounds of the draft. So we'll just kind of see, how that kind of changes in the very end. It's a lot of work to do, but that drop in number is not a surprise, and I don't really foresee it changing anytime soon.
Collaboration process around this time of year between your staff and front office.
Yeah, a lot. Even it's actually, in the past, not being in the postseason, you kind of have a little bit more time to take a little more time to do all these meetings. And look, I give a lot of credit to our pro scouting department because they've done a lot of work in the immediate and, even when we were in the postseason to make sure that right when our season ended, that we were able to hit the ground running, which we were. But it's all collaboration, and that's how Dan and I operate. That's how it is from the very top with the Ford family and Sheila. And I just think that's the best way to operate. I think it's easier to move a couch with two people than one person, and so it takes everyone. You can't just say, well, the scouting department is going to just evaluate all these free agents and should no. Like the coaches got to have buy-in too, and because once they're acquired, they're spending all their time with the coaches, so you want to have buy-in on that side too, and so but yeah, it's been a very collaborative process up to this point, and we don't see this changing. Yeah,
I couldn't hear the question.
I guess if he was, he was an outside corner, but again, that's, you're talking about a late third round pick, so really, yeah, that would have been the highest that we've gone. That's not been intentional. Again, like you all know, everybody knows that I've talked to. We're all just going to just pick the best players. Obviously, you can't have enough corners. It's a very hard position to play. It requires so much, not only physical qualities but intangible qualities to be successful at that position. And you might have to be a little more selective in acquiring them. And when you find a good one, they're hard to find. They're not growing on trees. Although that's arguably them and wide receivers probably the most voluminous group, position group in a draft. But that doesn't mean that they're all going to be good. So and especially as high as you might have to pick them, especially because of their physical qualities. If you get wooed by the physical qualities too much, but they don't have the intangible qualities, you get yourself in trouble. So I hope I'm answering your question, clearly. But it is kind of, I don't want to call myself a snob of, outside corners, but, I have a lot of appreciation for that position. I was a cornerback cross-check for like over a decade back with the Rams, and, I love corner play. I just love it. I could watch DB individuals all day, every day. I think it's poetry in motion. I love DB play. But, yeah, we just want to get the right fit.
I love this. I just learned something new about Brad Holmes. I had no idea that, arguably his favorite position is corner to watch, to study. And he's got great admiration for what he calls poetry in motion. So maybe this should make us feel a little bit more comfortable that he's passed on some corners because he just wasn't 100% sold. Great point. They might have all the measurables, just like I've said this week and everyone said for years. The combine gives you some vision, right? It gives you some ideas. It paints a better picture of what this player is going to be on the field by his measurables, the speed, but the intangibles, the things off the field, in the locker room, studying film, understanding the game. All of those qualities make the player that much better. So if you get wooed, like he said, by just the measurables, just the length and the strength and the speed, you're going to get in trouble. So I've said it last week when I was, or last couple weeks when I've put out a couple of videos, one on Kamal Hayden. Look, I don't care if these guys run a 4.5. or a 4.45 versus a guy that runs a 4.26. I'd rather have a guy that's intelligent, that knows where he's supposed to be, that understands the game, that understands the position, versus someone that's just blazing fast. Because what are they going to do? They're just going to run faster to get themselves out of position quicker, versus a guy that might be just a little bit slower, who's going to get himself in position. He's going to be right on time. So there's some good things to take away from Brad Holmes today. This being one of them, that if he selects a corner, expect it to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's confidence. It's wiring. Those guys. I know. The money makers is ball production, and that's first and foremost. But you got to tackle too. And the more and more as you see, man, when your corners are tackling, that really can define who you are on defense. But it's.
I got to stop it again. I'm sorry. So now we know. What did I say just last week when we were reviewing the corners? And I think it was in which video was it? It was Corner Review. Talking about Steven Nelson, I believe, was the video. If you go back and watch that one, how I said all of our corners were great run defenders. They had high marks from PFF in run defense. Brad Holmes just said, you got to take care of the ball, the ball carriers, right? But you got to tackle. You have to tackle. It's great to, be great against the pass and all that stuff. But if you don't tackle, in his opinion, it probably doesn't matter, how good you are at everything else. Putting words in his mouth. But I find this stuff interesting because when I break down the tape and I break down these guys, I'm starting to see the similarity as to why Brad Holmes does what he does. I'll never truly understand it. Nobody ever will. but there's some things here that make me even more comfortable about his decisions.
Those guys, the really good ones, are hard to find.
Just curious, I know you're not going to name names, but are you hopeful to get a little bit more work done here before the new league year starts? Is there still things that you kind of working on?
Yeah, we have, we're like I said, we're aligned in what we're going to do. Obviously, there's that unknown in the
Question was, are you hopeful to get, it sounded like some contracts done, some extensions done before the draft is maybe what I heard?
the future and the unforeseen. So, but I think we've done a lot of work already to be ready to adjust for potentially the unknown, and if it takes a pivot here or there. But so can't make any guarantees if it's going to be at a certain time point. But we're just going to be as smart as we can be and as sound as we can be in our decision making. Yeah, Lance was he was excellent. I can't speak enough about. Someone else asked me that question. Very, very passionate, very smart, very dependable, very reliable, a great evaluator. He's one of those guys that always talk about, there's some don't have to worry about guys, and he falls in that bucket because of his qualities. But Lance is a big loss, but it's a big game for Washington. Yep, thanks.
All right, Brad Holmes, the mystery man. Man, oh man. All right, so I feel good about this one. Dan Campbell didn't give us a ton. He gave us a little bit, but Brad Holmes gave us a lot. And let me try to think back here on a few things. I'll start from the last question about getting some contracts done, probably I think they said before the draft or something. So Brad talks about pivoting and being ready for the unknown. And if it takes a pivot or two here or there. What he means by that is, you're in contract negotiations and things kind of break down for a moment. You come at an impasse and you're just not seeing eye to eye, pivot. You take a break, week, 10 days, whatever it is, and then you come back to the table. Well, in that time, he can't sit idle. He's going to have to make sure that he can be ready to, pull the plug on something or go out and pluck somebody from somewhere. Here's the thing that I'm wondering. Are they going to try to wait as long as they can after the draft, like get past the draft to do their extensions? And the reason why I say that is there has to be some sort of psychology, and I don't know this for certain, of not locking your guys up before the draft. Number one, it could drive down salary negotiations, meaning they may be able to pay a little bit less for a player because they might be sweating it a little bit, saying, shoot, they're going into the draft. They're going to grab my replacement. Let's just send them a better offer, Mr. Agent. Let's get a deal done before the draft. That could happen. They could still keep the lid on it and not tell anybody. Or they may have an agreement between parties that says, look, we want the other 31 teams to sweat. We want them thinking we're taking a quarterback, we're taking a cornerback, we're taking a DT, we're taking a defensive end with our first pick. They could be playing this big chess game, that, I think about things that I would do. No idea if he's doing this type of stuff. So we may not see big extensions get done, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Goff. I mean, I think Sewell is the one that everyone's expecting already. I wouldn't be surprised if Sewell got done first, to be honest with you. First, meaning the bigger one, of the 3 or 4 that need to get done. Germ was just, he's a free agent acquisition all over again. So that part leads me to believe that they're playing some sort of game here, whether it is strategic in nature or, for the other teams or strategic in nature for their own players. We'll never know. And maybe someday you'll find out in a memoir from Brad Holmes. Who knows? The other thing that I wanted to speak to for a moment is the cornerbacks. And I know I touched on this for a brief second there, but we have gone through a couple of drafts now where there was cornerbacks staring at us hard in the face early, and he didn't grab any. And like they mentioned, if he was an outside corner, became a safety. There are a few corners in this draft that could become safeties, and there are a few safeties that could become corners. I would not put it past Brad Holmes to look at grabbing a safety in this draft that does have the ability to play corner. Whether that's a 1 or a 2, I would dare say if they're going to make the jump, it's probably going to be, the right side or cornerback 2 or as a backup versus, starting at a safety, because our safety help is pretty good, but we still need a good backup. But versatility is everything to Brad Holmes. He wants that versatility on the team. He wants corners that can play safety and safeties that can play corner. Brian Branch is a good example. He's a nickelback that plays safety. And he's, for all intents and purposes, I mean, he's playing slot corner, a lot, often. It depends on what package he's in. The other thing that Brad Holmes mentioned very early is you don't know what you don't know. This is the one that's going to bother me today, because free agency, it gives you a lot of options to help your team. And I'm not saying that Brad's not going to do anything, because I still think he will, but it's making me lean a little bit heavier into the boat that he's not going to do much big splashing in the big pond. He's going to do some big splashing in the little ponds, the second tier guys, maybe even third tier depth guys. He's probably looking to, again, grab 2 or 3 impact players this draft, and that's it. Because if you add 2 or 3 guys that can come in and start right away, you're incrementally making your team better. You've got 22 starters. If you grab 2, your team just got 10% better that year. Every draft that you get through, if you grab 2, you're getting 10% better that year. And now he's gone through 4 drafts. Well, he should be 40% better than he was the first year, right? I mean, math is math. But last year we got 4 impact players. So that was a big difference. And I'm sorry, math's off. 5% better with every 2 that you're grabbing. So at this point, after this draft, we should be around 40 to 50% better than we were that first roster that he had and that first draft that he had. Dare I say we're a lot further along than that? I don't think so. We still need to find that number 1 corner. We still need to find that right side defensive end help or defensive tackle. At the end of the day, I feel very confident with what Brad Holmes is doing. There's a reason why he does this. He's learned something along the way for doing this for many years, and he's been pretty darn successful with it. If you think for one moment that the Rams win that Super Bowl without all of the work that Brad Holmes put in prior to that, I think that we would be sorely mistaken. Yes, Matt Stafford went to that team. You could call it an upgrade over Jared Goff at that time, but I don't think that there's many that would call it an upgrade now. Upgraded arm, for sure. But I don't know about a total upgrade as far as a playmaker. I think Jared Goff's a pretty darn good playmaker. The Rams went out and grabbed a couple of players that really helped get that team over the hump. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking at right now. Like, when are the Lions going to go out and grab that, 1 or 2 guys that can really get us over the hump? But Brad Holmes said today, you just don't know these guys. Now, there's going to be guys that he's interviewed in past drafts, right, that are now available this season or will become available next season. If you think about it, all the 2nd through 7th round guys will be available next season. So I'm almost expecting next year, Brad is probably going to be a much bigger player in free agency than he will be out of any of the other years that he's been involved in with the Lions. And that's because he's interviewed, 30 plus guys every single season now for 4 seasons. Next year will be 5, and he's going to know a lot of these guys. Now, he doesn't know them from an in-house perspective because he hasn't had them on the team for all those years. But if he would have taken them in the draft then, why wouldn't he add them to the team now? My question is, was AJ Epinesa ever on his list? So today, I'm going to try to find out. I don't know when I'm going to get that information available, but I'm going to try to find out today all of the in-house visits that Brad Holmes has had in the last 5 years and see what players make sense. Now, I know I'm giving nuggets away to all the other creators out there to run with this information, but that's all right. You still got to have the drive to go find the info. All right, question from JT's Massive Purpose. What is your massive purpose, JT? That's a great name. Do you feel that cornerback will be pushed back to third round now after this interview? I always thought cornerback would be a third round for this team in this draft. I did never really think that it would be first round because of where we're picking. Doesn't make sense to grab a corner number one. But I do believe we're looking at safety in the middle of the rounds. I think safety, end of the second, third round is an option. I'm hoping that Brad does something with, one of our late round picks, maybe a pick from next year, and moves back into the third round, or somehow adds a fourth round by moving back, because we do need an extra pick. I think that if we can get 5 picks inside 120, 110, I think that we would do very well. We would end up with at least 3 impact players this season, and we'll be just fine. Mile Marker 301 says, I like how Brad referred to those unknown moments as requiring a pivot. Exactly. He doesn't give up. He doesn't throw his hands up. He doesn't do anything but pivot and finds another way to get back to the table. Another way to try to get the deal done. Brad is such an intelligent person, you can tell. But when you look at him today, man, he looks tired. Dan Campbell looked great. Looked chipper, looked thin. Brad, man, he's looking a little sore in the eyes, a little tired. I know what it's like. I'm there often, but Polo Boy says, let's go Detroit. I'm excited for the season. A lot of us are. Mile Marker 301. I don't know. Is IKR, I know, right? Corner, brilliant. I think that's what that means. And then he said, poetry in motion equals something that my dad would have said. That's old school. So that's really it for the recap today. Brad Holmes, press conference here at the Combine. Interesting stuff today. I think that it's going to give us some things to think about. I haven't had a chance to go rewatch Dan Campbell yet. I'll probably do that later on tonight after we go live tonight with top 5 prospects. That's what I'm going to be breaking down tonight. And it's going to be more than 5, but top 5 prospects probably from each position. Might be able to get through half of them tonight. And then we're going to be getting ready for Thursday. And then tomorrow morning, pop-up show for Rise and Grind. Morning show. I'm going to do another show tomorrow morning. I don't know if Derek's going to make it or not. It's an off day. It's not a planned day. But since we will not have a show on Thursday that I know of, unless I can somehow do it from my truck, we're going to do it. I'm going to do it tomorrow and try to find some things to talk about tonight, which there's going to be a lot to talk about. We just got to figure out a way to not talk about it all tonight too. So, all right. Appreciate you all joining in and watching Brad Holmes. The Lions obviously went a little early with the press conference, and they're having some trouble with their sound. Go figure. They need to hire. Hey, they got all this extra salary cap. I'm just kidding. I know it doesn't count towards the sound guys. But come on, Lions. Go out and find some good audio engineers, please, because we would love to be able to hear the questions. And I've said this before, too. I don't know if it's intentional, so that only the reporters can get all the questions and write about it and put all the information out. And we get to read about it later versus, getting to hear it all now. I don't know. But come on, get an audio engineer guy in there. It's been years that we've been begging you. And all of the press conferences that have been done have had terrible audio. And this is the NFL's platform. And it might have been just as bad as what goes on in Ford Field. So, all right, y'all. Brad Holmes, man of the hour, the mystery man. What's he going to do this season? So let me know in the comments. Do you think that Brad Holmes has given us the idea he's going to pass on free agency? Is he not going to bring in the big time guy? So let me know in the comments. No big time guy in free agency, or do we get one? One or none? We'll find out soon. Free agency starts here in just a couple of weeks. So there's only so long that he can hold out on us. All right, y'all. You guys take care. Go One Pride. Go Detroit Lions. We'll see y'all tonight, 8:30 p.m. Bye-bye.